and irrigation to maintain a level of production that can sustain their livelihood. Now, other than the extreme weather conditions, what are other things that are variability affecting the water availability and severely affecting your agriculture production, agroecological conditions, and shifting growing season? So, changes in rainfall, higher temperature also affect your crop productivity. Now, the reason for crop productivity is because maximum crops are demanding what? Rain-fed areas. Now, this shall reduce your food availability. The government of India has accessed the government of India has assessed the impact of climate change in 2050 and 2080 using climate projections and crop simulation models. Now, without adaptation measures, rain-fed rice yields in India are projected to reduce by 20%. Now, if you see your rice yields or your rice productions are going to decrease by 20% if water availability is not met. And this shall be the scenario to 47%. That means the reduction of rice cultivation would be reduced to 47%. That means this shall cut down. Whatever your production is, that shall be cut down by 47%. And by what year? That is 2080 scenarios. Wheat yields are projected to decrease by 19.3% and 40% in 2080, while Kharif maize yields could decline by 18% and 23%. Now, if you see, if the water shortage is not met, the severe effect is going to be on our agriculture sector. And one such effect is on rice. Second effect we saw is on maize. In every scenario, climate change without adequate adaptation measures reduces crop yields and lowers the nutritional quality of produce. That means the third factor that is going to affect is the nutritional quality. So, if the food is lacking in the nutrition, what is the purpose of eating them? The FAO, that is your Food Agriculture Organization in Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Himachal Pradesh, uh, Maharashtra is piloting a crop forecasting framework and model incorporating climate soil characteristics. Irrigation can also be an effective measure to make agriculture. Now, if you see, irrigation is a man-made practice, whereas all other practices that are weather or human or nature practices that have a different impact on agriculture. Now, soil characteristic and market information to aid rain-fed farmers in making informed decisions contributing to food security. Now, irrigation can also be an effective measure to make agriculture more resilient. And in most cases, what is happening is that it enables farmers to transform their livelihood by growing, consuming, and selling high-value crops such as nutritious fruits and vegetables. The WFP support soils and water conservation, building or fixing of irrigation channels, dams, ponds, dikes, as well as flood barriers through flood assistance or extreme fall deeper. Now, if you see what is the scenario in 2021, so alone in 2021, 8.7 million people across 49 countries have been benefited directly from such support. Now, what else? The Manrega program, which people are very much aware of. So the Manrega scheme is also similarly supported by the Indian states. Now, through safeguards during design, planning, and encouraging participatory institutional development, IFAD, that is your this department ensures that micro irrigation infrastructure is environmentally and socially sustainable and financially viable. So all the practices of micro irrigation are or should be just a minute. All the practices of micro irrigation should be in a manner where they are environmentally and socially sustainable and financially viable. Now, climate change adaptation. The FAO also supports the sustainable transformation of agri-food systems and climate-smart agriculture practices to improve water use efficiency. It supported the Farmer Water School program in Uttar Pradesh, which helped smallholder farmers. At the same time, the Andhra Pradesh Farmer Managed Groundwater System project reached out to 638 habitations in 7 drought-prone districts. Now, what else is happening? Similarly, IFAD has enshrined climate change adaptation in its core strategies. That means what have they been targeting is their ambitious targets. Also keeps in note what core strategies. And what are those core strategies? That is leveraging climate financing to mitigate climate change by addressing adverse impact of agriculture and helping farmers to adapt to the increased volatility of weather condition by investing the restoration, preservation of soil health, water resources, merging modern technologies with indigenous knowledge systems to build productive and resilient production. Now, all in all, what they are trying to build in is that they are trying to build in the natural practices. And what are those natural practices? So as to have what a climate resilient production system where the water shortage could be met. Apart from this, what are the steps needed? Now, this could be your way forward if you want to achieve global food security and the nutrition security. Political commitment is much needed. So, first thing the author is targeting is that political commitment is much needed. The needed policies and investments must promote innovative and proven technologies that allow farmers to increase their productivity, adapt to climate change, become more resilient to shock, environmentally and socially sustainable and financially viable irrigation and water management strategies. Further, they are opting for reduce their climate footprints of agriculture production, biohazards, and also environmental pollution. Other than that, they are saying that water supplies closer to rural households, adaptation of efficient food and water recycling strategies, strengthening institutional arrangements and capacity for sustainable and equitable water regulation, management, access, and ownership. Now, what is UN talking about? So, the UN's food agencies are working closely with the government of India and state governments. And with respect to what? For the innovations such as solar for resilience, secure fishing, and revival of millets for renewable energy promotion. So, four things that you need to keep in mind regarding solar for resilience, secure fishing. Next is your revival of millets and renewable energy promotion. And next is your food security and nutrition. So these are things that are being targeted by the UN food agencies in collaboration with the government of India and also the state government. Further moving to the next article, okay, closing the gender pay gap in the workforce. So the author of this article is a professor of National Council of Applied Economic Research, University of Maryland, and she has sought to say that when women were missing from the labor force, that was because they were home caring for children. So one reason she opted for that why women were missing out in the workforce, one was that the home caring for children was to be done when they were paid less than men. That was because they had lower education than men. That means one thing that they are targeting is that the pay parity was or pay disparity was there. One reason for that was the educational qualification of women were very much less as compared to the men's. Also said the economic orthodoxy, including theories popularized by the 1992 Nobel Prize winner Gary Becker. A few feminist economists and sociologists protested, but their voice was drawn out until Claudia Golden stood on the podium as the president of American Economic Association in 2013 and 14 and argued that the answer to the solution of missing and underpaid women did not lie at home, but rather in the market. So the president of America Economic Association, that is Claudia Golden, um, she was of the opinion that all the answers of missing or underpaid women are profoundly lying in the market. And she said we all were opting for the answers in the home, but whereas we shall look towards the market. Now, a name and a voice. When Betty Friedan wrote in 1963 about the college educated women who were frustrated stay at home mothers, that means all those women who were college educated, they were mostly frustrated for a reason of what stay at home. She noted that the problem has no name. So the only reason they were having issue was that was pertaining to staying at home. So the problem had no name, but the issue was that they were educated enough and they were forced to stay back at home. Now, Claudia Walden, the 2023 Economic Model Nobel Prize winner, has spent half a century giving a name and a voice to their problems. She has chronicled the evolution of American economy from agriculture to manufacturing to service oriented. Now, we all are aware that the agriculture or the economic transformation is happening from, or how it is happening from agriculture to manufacturing to service sector, and noted that as economic production moved from home to factories, women were excluded from the market activities. That means Claudia Goldenauer of the opinion that as the market, or you can say as the economic production shifted from home to industries, the participation of the women declined. It was not until offices, schools, and hospitals began to offer more jobs than factories that women found more jobs. Now, however, even when they entered the workforce in droves, overtook men in educational attainment, did not congregate in female jobs, and did not drop out from the labor force to have children. Women continued to earn less than men. So now, based on her analysis, she said that even though women participated in the workforce with that much of qualification, but their pay was very less when it was compared to the men. Professor Gordon argued that this advantage is due to their inability to take on jobs that involve all consuming responsibilities. Parental responsibilities make it difficult for women to take on jobs requiring long hours, irregular work schedules. The private equity partner who saw the deal through, just a minute, who saw the deal through and stayed for late night dinners and meetings had the chance of getting a fat bonus and promotion. So if you see the reason what Gordon has talked about, she said since the parental responsibilities were very high and had been high on women, so what happened was that they couldn't stay back for late night dinners and meetings, and profoundly because of these reasons, the chance of getting a fat bonus and promotions were missed out from the women's section. These demands were incompatible. Um, if you go with the common sense, yeah, definitely very true. These demands are incompatible with raising children, and one partner of a couple often chooses to go on a slower and safer track. The track dubbed the mommy track. That means she has used the terminology, and that terminology is related to mommy track. That means usually is the women section is going slower, whereas the male section is going for the fat bonuses and promotions. While women need not be the one choosing this slow track, gender ideologies often prompt couples to assign women to take over extra family duties while men remain free to concentrate on their careers. This is exactly what I just said right now, that men are taking all those fat bonuses and promotions, whereas the women are the ones who are staying back and taking care of the home. Professor Golden blamed this inequality on greedy work that demands extraordinary efforts from the workers rewarded with high salaries, high, big bonus, stock options, and fast promotions. Now, if you see, Golden has been very, I would say, stable with her analysis. Why? Because she has not even blamed the other gender, but has said that the work is greedy, that it is demanding extra effort. Had it not been extra effort that is being demanded, there would have been equality of opportunities for all. Other than that, rising income inequality leads to couples to forge gender equity within the household and concentrate on increasing family income via specialization. Her solution to this dilemma is restructuring a workplace that does not rely on the heroic efforts and has moderate work hours and predictable schedules. So, Gordon has very promptly said that what you need to do is that you need to manage your workspace in a manner where the work hours are very moderate. There is no extra reliance or no extra effort needed. The effort with respect to the big meetings and all, and the schedules are predictable. In some ways, Professor Golden's work dovetailed with that of Juliet Scott, who argued in her book, The Overworked American, that it was far more beneficial to companies to hire two workers who worked long hours than three workers who worked regular hours. So she has pointed out the argument of the book, that is The Overworked American, and talked about how it is beneficial to hire two workers for long working hours as compared to three workers working for regular time. And why such thing is happening? Because it reduced costs such as health insurance, office space, other than that, personal services, etc. So that is very much evident also, because if you are going to offer three workers, you have to provide them with social securities. I suspect that the Indian workers in Bangalore struggling to keep up with Zoom calls at 9:30 p.m. to confer with their American counterparts arriving in the office at 9 a.m. while helping their children with their algebra homeworks will relate to this. Other than that, what is happening? See, although women's employment rates in India remain low, secular changes suggest that there is no reason why this must continue. Building on Professor Gordon's observation, the growth of the service sector should offer jobs for women that are not offered by the manufacturing sector. So, one thing that is coming on your way is that the jobs in the manufacturing sector for the women should again mark and increase. Then rising education should increase their employability. So firstly, increase the jobs in the manufacturing sector. Second is increase the employability. Declining fertility should free up women's time. So there should be, or this is what is evident also, that declining fertility is freeing up women, and freeing up women with most of the household chores and more open for workspace. But how can we take the advantage of these fortuitous circumstances? Now, how should the environment be reshaped? That is the environment of workforce. Now, while increased male participation in household work and childcare would help, we must also find ways of reshaping both the work and the social environment. That means efforts should be made in to reshape the environment of both work and social environment, and what could be the reason for so that they are conducive to developing a work life balance. Now, any job, anywhere, any kind of things, They always want one thing, that is your work-life balance. This means having work structures that are respectful for workers' time and do not emphasize very long work hours. Now, if you see, the entire article was talking about all the kind of extra efforts that are needed, and this is what Golden Professor was saying also, that this is not because of any other gender, or the issue not lies with the other gender, but the issue lies with what? Greedy work, because that is demanding things other than the regular work. And this is what this article is also talking about, that work life balance should be there. This makes both social and economic sense. Stanford economist John Penkivel has shown that longer working hours do not mean more productivity. That means it doesn't ensure more productivity even though the workers have been sitting there for long. For example, if you have a 10-hour shift, doesn't mean that you are working or you are providing what productivity of 10 hours. But if we need to rein in the greedy workplace, we also need to rein in a variety of institutions that demand more and more of our time. This includes schools that rely on parents to supervise homework and urban development that places home far from workplace. Until we can create these supportive institutions, it will be hard to write the last chapter for the grand gender convergence in labor market outcome that Claudia Golden advocates for so fiercely. That means Claudia Golden has been talking about what increasing participation of women or more of gender parity at workforce, and this could be achieved only if there is more clarity in the workplace and there is more convergence of labor irrespective of gender. Fine. So this was about closing the gender pay gap in the workforce. That means increase your gender participation by countering the greedy work and also bringing more opportunities at workforce. Why? Because women now here are equally educated as compared to the men section, so employability should definitely include or should also take in reference the women section. Okay, so this one was about the closing gender pay gap in the workforce. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, Israel, Hamas, and the laws of the war. So, what are the international laws when it comes to the question of war? Civilian attacks, hostage taking, etc. That means there are three things that they are targeting. One is that if the war is happening at an international levels, what are the protocols that need to be referred? Other than that, there are mass casualties that are happening, and these mass casualties are on to who? Those civilians. And hostage taking is on to who? Again, the civilians. So, what are the protocols? What are the laws of the war of such? So let's move on to this. Now, on October 7, Hamas, a Palestinian-based terrorist group, launched an attack on Israel, killing hundreds of civilians. Again, I'm saying war is not the solution for anything, and the one who are at the receiving end are your civilians, and that had made many hostage. Israel has retaliated with all its might, triggering a war in West Asia. So, what are the laws of the war? Now, there are two separate and independent international laws question related to wars. What is the first one? Under what conditions or when can countries use force in their international relations? So, this is known as just ad bellum, and this just ad bellum is regulated by WHO, the United Nations Charter. Then second is what? How is war to be fought? That is what military actions are permissible, and this is known as jus in bello. And this is again by who? The UN Charter. So, assuming a country is justified under the UN Charter to use force, it still must ensure that it satisfied was Justin Bellow obligation. Justification to use force does not relieve a country of its obligation to use such force in accordance with international laws. That means no matter what you are doing, you have to do things in accordance with law. And what is that law? That is your international laws. The how of using force or the law of war is known as international humanitarian law. Then this becomes very important with respect to your international relations. Now, what is international humanitarian law? Which provides the rules that must be followed during an armed conflict. That means all these laws are made with respect to what, so as to counter the armed conflicts. Now, international humanitarian law is contained in what? Customary international laws. The Geneva Convention of 1949, the additional protocols of 1977. It regulates the conduct of the parties or groups engaged in an armed conflict. Now, what is the primary objective? The primary objective of such is to protect civilians, reduce the sufferings of war unleashes. That means one thing is very clear, that means we need to reduce what? The sufferings of war, and also we need to do what? We need to talk about protecting the civilians. No matter how just the cause of fighting a war, warring parties must comply with international humanitarian laws. Does the law of war apply to the ongoing military conflict? Yes, because the military conflict between Israel and Hamas is an armed conflict, as was held by International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia in the prosecutor versus the Skudarek case. This case becomes very important. An armed conflict in international law exists when there is a resort to armed forces between states or protracted armed violence between governmental authorities and organized armed groups, or between such groups within a state. International law classifies armed conflict in two categories. Now, what are those two categories? International armed conflict, non-international armed conflict. According to Common Article 2 of the Geneva Convention, um, international armed conflict includes all cases of declared war or any other armed conflict between two or more countries. That NIAC, that is your non-international armed conflict, includes non-governmental forces, that is Hamas, which is involved in battle with the government forces, that is Israel. So your NIAC, that is non-governmental forces, that is your Hamas, and is in conflict with government forces of who? Israel. Can Article 3 of the Geneva Convention applies to non-international armed conflict. Thus, Israel and Hamas are obliged to abide by the IHL, that is your international humanitarian laws. What about, see, in IHL, that is your international humanitarian laws, your both the conflicts are coming. And what are those? International armed conflicts and non-international armed conflicts. So non-international armed conflict, there is one this group, that is Hamas, which is a non-governmental group, is against the government of Israel. So this war or this kind of conflict is also coming under international humanitarian law, and this shall shout for what? That there should be less of sufferings of war and there should be more of protection of the civilians. Now, what about the civilians killing? The primary objective of international humanitarian law is that during an armed conflict, a distinction is always made between the combatants and the civilians. War parties can only attack combatants and military attack, not the civilians and civilian objects. That means, even though the armed conflict is happening, it should keep in know that the civilians and civilian objects, that means all those development projects that have taken place in the area should not be affected. Why? Because they are for the civilians. Indiscriminate attack that fail to distinguish between the combatants and the civilians are forbidden and thus illegal. Accordingly, the killing of civilians by Hamas is illegal. Israel's Israel's illegal and belligerent occupation of the Palestinian territory since 1967 does not allow Hamas to kill, injure, abduct, or torture Israeli civilians or target civilian installations. Also, any military attack that causes disproportionate harm to civilians when judged against the expected military benefit is barred. So what is happening is Israel reportedly dropped 6,000 bombs on Gaza, causing widespread destruction and death. So 6,000 bombs. This is a disproportionate use of force. Hamas' horrific attack on Israel does not justify Israel inflicting disproportionate harm on the civilian population in Gaza. All this amounts to grave breaches of the 1949 Geneva Convention and constitutes as war crimes. That means the dropping of these many bombs by Israel on Gaza Strait is constituted as a crime under Geneva Convention. Now, is hostage taking legal? Hamas has taken Israelis hostage. This is illegal. Hostage taking is specifically recognized as a war crime by Article 8 of the Rome Statutes, a treaty establishing the International Criminal Court. Article 1 of the International Convention Against the Taking of Hostage recognizes hostage taking as a crime. So, if the question arises whether hostage taking or hostage making is a crime, so yes, it is a crime. What about the Gaza Strip block? Israel's plan to block the supplies of food, electricity, water, and fuel in the Gaza Strip were close to 2 million people live and amounts to collective punishment retaliating against a group for the conduct of individuals said to belong to that group. This action will exacerbate the already harsh air and sea blockades of the Gaza Strip since 2007. If you people are aware, then there was news circulating out that Israel is going to block the entire food supply chain towards the Palestinians that are staying near the Gaza Strip. Now, what is or how is this action will be counted? Such an action violates a human tenet of international humanitarian law that no person should be punished for actions they didn't commit. Punishing all Gaza Strip residents for Hamas action is illegal and a war crime. Additionally, under international humanitarian law, warring parties must give advance warning to civilians to evacuate before attacking, which should be effective. If civilians were not given adequate time to evacuate, the warning will be ineffective. Israel's warning to the resident of Gaza Strip is not effective. Given the air and sea blockades, the civilians do not have a realistic possibility of moving to safe places. This is what exactly I told you that Israel has warned that there will be blocking of food supplies at Gaza Strip, and what they have said is that even if Israel goes ahead with such, the civilians do not have a realistic possibility of moving to safe places. That means if the Palestinians want to move out, the chances are very less. Both sides need to respect their international humanitarian law obligations and an investigation should be launched into the war crimes committed. So they are demanding for what the author is talking about, that international humanitarian law should be respected and obligations should be made so that such crimes with respect to wars are not happening in future. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Study estimates estimate counts of UAVs. UAVs are your unmanned aerial vehicles required for three services. That means UAVs have been opted for three services. The study has recommended procurement of 31 MQ-9B high altitude UAVs and 155 medium altitude UAVs. Now, the Chief of Defense Staff, that is your CDS, has offered another study on the use of armed helicopter by the armed forces. So the CDS recently ordered two studies to be conducted on major military platforms used by the three services. According to the defense sources, these platforms are UAV, the armed helicopters. The study on UAVs has since been completed with a recommendation to acquire this much high altitude long endurance UAVs, this much medium altitude long endurance UAVs. The study is undertaken by tri-service teams and meant to optimize the number of platforms required as well as the resources to avoid the duplication. And this is sent, or this is told by a defense source. The first study was conducted in this month. For the second study, the term of reference are currently being finalized and the study is expected to begin in a month or two. What are the major upgrades that are coming by? So the broad outcome of study on UAVs was a requirement for 31 MQ-9B half UAVs, sorry, HALE UAVs and 155 MALE UAVs. While the deal for these is in progress, the division of this one UAVs among the three services is yet to be decided. That means the deal for MQ-9B is happening, whereas for 155 MALE is still in progress. The three services operate a large number of Israeli heroin MALE UAVs. A major upgrade to weaponize and incorporate satellite communication on these UAVs estimate to cost of rupees 21,000 crores. In June, the Defense Ministry cleared the procurement of 31 MQ-9B UAVs from General Atomics and 15 Sea Guardians for the Navy and 8 Sky Guardians for your each for Army and Air Force. That means for Army, for Navy, and for Air Force. Now these are the three where your UAVs are planned to be given. Now, what would be the estimate cost? Because since the UAVs have been recommended for all the three ones, so it will be $3,000 million, though the US foreign military sales route. That means last month, what happened was that the Honorable Prime Minister and the US President during the G20 summit, the Defense Ministry issued the letter of request to the US government. And this letter of request was regarding what? This will finalize the letter of offer and acceptance, and where details of equipment and the terms of procurement would be negotiated and finalized. Army to get Apaches. The or the Air Forces has traditionally been responsible for operating attack helicopters. That means the work of the Air Force was profoundly towards the operation of attack helicopters. Over the past decades, the Army has sought to operate attack helicopters on its own in support of its strike formation. Now, the Army Aviation Corps recently inducted the first batch of light combat helicopters. Both the Army and the Air Force are inducting the initial batch of 15 LCH. A bigger deal for 156 LCH, 90 for the Army, 66 for the Air Force, which is estimated to cost around 45,000 crore, which is awaiting the government's approval. So the Cabinet Committee on Security has already given in principle sanctions for the procurement of 39 AH-64 Apache helicopters. The Air Force has since inducted 22 Apache helicopters, and this was a deal that was signed back in 2015. At this point, what is the government deciding? So government is further deciding for the procurement of the Apache helicopter. That means we are already having 22, which was signed back on 2015, and the government is still towards the procurement of another Apache helicopters. Now India signed a deal for six more Apaches for Army, and this six more Apaches will be costing how much? These six more Apaches will be costing around $800 million. The army will start receiving them from February 2024. So that means the cost worth 800 million is for how many Apaches? There are six Apache helicopters. Just a minute. Okay. The army has been pushing a case for 11 more Apaches, and preliminary discussions are on with Boeing. That means Boeing is the agency, or you can say the corporation that deals with the manufacturing of the helicopters. With the study on armored helicopter, two sources said progress on additional Apache would be based on the outcome. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So the next news at your page is railways develop anti-freeze flushes and fuel tanks for journey in Jammu and Kashmir. Okay. The process of linking Kashmir to Kanyakumari through the new Udhampur Srinagar Baramulla railway link. So what is happening is Udhampur Sri Lanka Baramulla rail link. Now this project is unique in what aspect? So this project poses a unique challenge, and challenge to what? To the railways in maintaining water and fuel in liquid form in sub-zero temperature during winters. Now it is very difficult to maintain water, water and fuel at sub-zero temperature. Now to circumvent the problem of water freezing in fuel tanks, engineers at rail coach factories, that is RCF in Kapurthala, have designed and implemented indigenous innovations. While the LHPs, that is your these railway related things. LHD coach is designed prominently used by the railways. It did not have temperature control system. That means the present coaches that were designed, those coaches don't have the facility of what? Of controlling the temperature. Now, in winter, temperature in the Jammu and Kashmir region plummet to -8 to -12 degrees centigrade. Now, you see the adversity of the temperature is so hard that the coaches are not very well defined to maintain themselves with this rigorous temperature. How is the humanly possible to even make the fuel at liquid form? Now, I did not have temperature control systems, and this is how the temperature of Jammu and Kashmir region is varying. There is a problem if the water freezes in the tank. Now, this is what exactly they have pointed out, that fuel and water freezing is very much possible. In fact, this is going to happen in the region, so that need to be checked. The flushes and the toilets won't work as the water won't get circulated. There will be no supply of water in the taps. Another major challenge is that if the water tank is full, there is hazard that will develop cracks and burst as ice has the tendency to expand. Now, if you have done it in your physics during school days, Then you must have heard about ice contraction. That means the water freezes, the ice will contract, and then there's a very high possibility of what any kind of ill practice that might occur. Okay, so the RCF has designed double-walled composite insulated water tanks of capacities ranging between 450 liters and 685 liters. That means now the RCF is designing what those water tanks who have the capacity of 450 liters and 685 liters, and they are double walled, and they are composite insulated water tanks. So that means double walled insulated water tanks, so as the water in the tanks, this much of capacity does not get affected. The water tank mimics thermoplastic bottles with two walls and an insulation layer of foams in the middle, which traps the air. This will maintain water in liquid form in sub-zero condition from 16 to 20 hours. The water may remain cold, but it won't freeze. In another innovation, the RCF has borrowed technology from the Defense Service to tackle the problem of freezing water in the supply pipelines. So, another technology has been borrowed, and this technology is with respect to what? To tackle the problems of freezing water in the supply pipeline, because again, then the water will contract or the ice will contract after getting freezed. We are using heated pipes with a distributed heating system covered by insulation. The water will remain cold at 5 to 8 degrees Celsius in liquid form. To contain energy loss, geysers will be deployed at the point of use in toilets where only as much water is needed as by the users will be heated. That means another kind of technology is being deployed which will help in what heating the water so that freezing won't occur. A similar technology is being deployed in the fuel tanks for the locomotives by the RCF. The 111 kilometer long railway stretch from Batra in Jammu to Banihal in Kashmir is slated to be functional before March next year when the national elections are due. That means the 111-kilometer long railway stretch from Batra in Jammu to Banihal in Kashmir is slated to be functional by March next year when the national elections are due. Okay, so the next one at your screen is center likely to raise the age of retirement of scientists to 65. Now, aim is to stem the flight of top scientists to universities and IITs. Now, what is happening is the Science and the Technology Ministry is working on a proposal to increase in the retirement age of scientists, and its larger purpose suggests is to stem the flight of its top senior scientists to universities. Now, what else is happening? Now, this is a note by the ministry, and what is the note saying? That it is a proposal for the enhancement of the retirement age of scientists in autonomous bodies of science and departments, ministries, and in a way. Now, what they are ensuring is that the Department of Science and Technology, which are headed by the Institute to furnish the total action strength of scientists in their autonomous body. That means all those people who are present in the autonomous body, the number of scientists retiring in the next 5 years, and the additional financing implications of the enhanced retirement age. So, what is going about? See, the aim is very clear. What is that? That is that all the early stage approval and under discussion should be taken profoundly. And then what they are doing is that the Department of Science and Technology is already sending details of eligible scientists for evaluation. That means all those scientists who are or who should or who are the members of the autonomous bodies can contribute towards the STEM sector of the country shall or their age bar should be expanded. Uh, this is not the first time that the government has moved at raising the retirement age. A draft cabinet led by the ministry has said that the move would bring clarity in the service conditions of research scientists working in different arms of the government. So far, the general trend in the ministry has been to give scientists nearing retirement extensions that may increase their tenure by 2 or up to 5 years. The government said with such extensions and instead opted for short-term contracts to remain valuable senior employees. That means the target of the government is to retain what the valuable employees. See, the target is clear that they want to retain the valuable employees, but then the issue of corruption again persistently rise here. Why? Because of the culture of favoritism. So the people who are favorite will definitely be given higher tenures. So, though the scheme seems to be very lovey-dovey, but I don't see it to be worked out because the culture of favoritism is very popular in India. So let's see how they'll work out with this. However, the 2015 proposal, despite being discussed publicly at the highest level of the government, appears to have been buried. That means the proposal has been discussed. However, how is it going to work out? That has not been drafted very well. So let's wait for it and let's see how it is going to get evaluated. So this much for today. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.